Good morning, students of Standard 10, and welcome to the second chapter of History, the extension of the British rule. Yes, in the last classes, we have studied something about the Carnatic Wars, Battle of Plassey, and the Battle of Buxar. Now, through Carnatic Wars, the English had made other European countries not to challenge them in India. That means the French, Portuguese, Dutch were overthrown, and only the English retained the power and remained in India. The Britishers, they gained complete political control over Bengal through Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar. Now let's see how they extended their rule throughout India. By 1765, they had gained control most of the eastern parts of India, where West Bengal, Bihar comes. Since the Marathas and Mysore states were dominant in southern and western part of India, the Britishers wanted to attack the western part of India. And as I said, the Maratha and Mysore states were under the Indian rulers. The hold of British was restricted to Bengal and Bombay regions only. Till then, they were holding on to West Bengal and Mumbai. Whereas in the South India, it was the Marathas, the Peshwas of Marathas, and the kings of Mysore. In the Mysore state, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan was ruling, and along with Peshwa of Maratha were the only independent kings in the southern India. Now, the Britishers had an eye on the Marathas and the Mysore states because they did not have any control over the South India. So all their thoughts was to subdue and put down the Mysore and the Maratha kings. Now, let's see what are the wars they waged to get back the South Indian states under their control. The British also waged repeatedly wars from the mid of 18th century to mid of 19th century to extend their empire in India, because most of the eastern part of India was under their control, but only the southern part, South India, was not under their control. So they somehow wanted to fight and get back the whole India under their control. Apart from this, they also annexed various kingdoms with cunning policies like subsidiary alliance and doctrine of lapse. Yes, subsidiary alliance was introduced by Lord Wellesley, and doctrine of lapse was introduced by Lord Dalhousie. But in this class, we are not going to read about these two policies because they have omitted these two ones. Fine. In this unit, we are going to learn only about the Anglo-Maratha War and the Anglo-Sikh Wars. Now, we are going to learn the first Anglo-Maratha War, which took place in the year 1775 to 1782. What were the reasons for the first Anglo-Maratha War? Anglo is the Britishers, Maratha is the native rulers, Maratha kings. So that's why we call it as a Anglo-Maratha War. The war between the Britishers and the Indian, the Marathas. Now what were the reasons? The Marathas instilled Shah Alam II back on the throne of Mughal Empire in Delhi. Instilled, they kept him as a king. Now, the emperor gave Kora, which is in the North India, and Allahabad to Marathas, which he had earlier given them to the Britishers. Now that emperor had given away these two places beforehand to Britishers, but now he just gave it to the hands of the Indian ruler, which this resulted in the enmity between Marathas and the Britishers. So naturally, the Britishers did not like, because those two places were taken out from their hand and given away to the native rulers. So that is the first reason why they wanted to fight against the Marathas. Next, the other reasons were, during this period, the death of Maratha's strong man, Madhava Rao Peshwa, was a major setback to Marathas. In a sense, Madhava Rao was very strong and he was ruling Maratha, and he dies away. So that is another setback for the Marathas. There was no any other strong rulers to fight back the Britishers. The next reason was, though his brother Narayana Rao came to power, reasons were, during this period, the death, Madhava Rao died, and so there was another setback to the Marathas. Then, his brother Narayana Rao came to power, but he was murdered by his uncle Raghoba, who was also called as Raghunath Rao. This resulted in the fighting for the Peshwa post. Now, among the native rulers itself, they were fighting as who will come or become the king. So that is another weak point, and so Britishers wanted to attack the Marathas. So, what are the other major reasons for the first Anglo-Maratha war? The Maratha Federation brought Madhava Rao II of Narayana Rao to the post of Peshwa. When there were a fighting between the 3 to 4 kings for the Peshwaship, so immediately the Federation brought Narayana Rao as the Peshwa. So there was a misunderstanding between our native rulers. This was also another cause or the reason for the Britishers to fight. Help one person and fight the whole Marathas. So a long war was waged from 1775 to 1782 between the Marathas and the Britishers. So they started fighting against the Marathas. So initially, though the Marathas gained upper hand, finally they did not win the war. So let's see the effects of the first Anglo-Maratha war. At last, they had to lose Allahabad to the British. The Maratha Federation, unable to sustain the war with the British, finally entered Salabai Agreement and ended the war. And Madhava Rao II was named as the Peshwa. Thus, the first Anglo-Maratha war ends with the Treaty of Salabai Agreement. Let's read the second Anglo-Maratha war from 1803 to 1805. What are the reasons? The differences among the Maratha chieftains was the reason for this war. Means they were not agreed between two of them. They were at differences, opinion. So an enmity broke between Yashwant Rao of Holkar, Daulat Rao of Sindhia, and Peshwa Balaji Rao II. So lot of differences and different opinion between these native rulers. And some other reasons are, in 1802, the army of Holkar defeated the army of Sindhia and the Peshwa. The Peshwa appealed for help from the British. Lord Wellesley finally got an opportunity to meddle with the affairs of Marathas. The Peshwa entered the subsidiary alliance system by accepting the Treaty of Basin. So again, the second Anglo-Maratha war ends with the Treaty of Basin. What were the effects? What all happened after this war, second Anglo-Maratha War. Increased the financial burden on the company, means East India Company. They increased the finance. They asked them to pay a lot of money to the company, and Lord Wellesley resigned from the post and returned to England. This resulted in peace in the region, means peace in the native rulers, among the rulers. Now let's learn something about the Third Anglo-Maratha War, which took place in 1817 to 1818. The Maratha families tried their best to protect their independence and honor. They did not want to hand over their kingdom into the hands of British. Somehow they tried. Even the Peshwa attempted to free himself from the clutches of the company. Though they signed the agreement in the subsidiary alliance, they wanted to come out from that clutches, from that bondages, from under the Britishers, and keep themselves free. But it was not possible. What all the effect in the Third Anglo-Maratha War? Again the war broke out between Britishers and the Marathas. The British abolished the Peshwa post. Totally they abolished the king's post and granted a pension to Bajirao II. He was the Peshwa. He was sent out and they just gave him the pension. They installed Pratap Simha, the descendant of Shivaji, as the ruler of Satara. Just as a puppet, they placed Pratap Simha as a ruler or the Peshwa. So, with that, we complete the Third Anglo-Maratha War. Next, let's see something about the Anglo-Sikh Wars. A political anarchy broke out in Punjab. Now they are moving on to the Punjab after the death of King Ranjit Singh in 1839. Actually, King Ranjit Singh was considered to be the lion of Punjab. But after his death, there was no one to rule the kingdom, and most of the rulers were weak. So British eye went on to that Punjab now, to attack and occupy even Punjab states. The British attempted to invade Punjab, violating the continuous friendship pact they had with the erstwhile king. So earlier they had a very friendly relationship, but now, the moment they came to know that no kings were so strong enough to fight back the British, they wanted to attack and occupy even Punjab. In December 1845, the war broke out between the British and the Punjab. Sensing the danger from an outside force, all Hindus, Sikhs and Muslims got together to defeat the British. But finally they had to accept the defeat due to few traitor leaders. They could not win because there were a few traitor leaders. Traitor means who helped the Britishers secretly and leaked out all the secrecy of the Indians. And so the Sikhs could not win that war. What all were the effects of the Anglo-Sikh wars? The Sikhs lost in our battle. They signed a humiliating Lahore agreement in 1846. It was so humiliating to just simply accept the treaty. Like this, Punjab became the dependent state of East India Company. Again, Punjab also went into the hand of the British. Like this, the Anglo-Britishers war also was lost. Anglo-Sikh war also was lost. Whole Punjab came under Britishers and Maratha also came under the Britishers. At last, the merge, full Punjab was brought into the hand of the British. The Sikh opposed the attempts by the British to rule Punjab directly. Though the Sikh people from the Punjab opposed for the Britishers not to rule them, but it was of vain. The opposition were led by Chatar Singh Atharwala in Lahore, Mulraj in Multan, and again the people of Punjab were defeated. See, from Atharwala, from in Lahore, it was Chatar Singh Atharwala, and from Multan, it was Mulraj. As a leadership, they fought. They wanted to chase away the British, but nothing could happen. The Britishers defeated them and took over Punjab. Finally, Lord Dalhousie merged the state of Punjab with the British empire. Thus, the Maratha and the Sikh came into the hands of the Britishers. The British completed their agenda of ruling the entire India, the whole India, north, south, east, west, came under Britishers from 1818 to 1857. They occupied major states like Sindh, Awadh, many other smaller states. And with that, the whole control of the Britishers came under the whole India. With that, I complete the second chapter, the extension of the British rule in India. Thank you, students. Stay safe.